after which it's a bit like a game of climate roulette that will be able to control things. So that's a way in which there's a technological path dependency in which the victims could ultimately be everyone unless we can sort it out.
Well, I think that's a suitably doom-laden note on which to bring it to our audience here in Gateshead. And you've been hearing a lot of viewpoints, some of them quite controversial and all of them stimulating, I think. So this would be a great moment to open up to any questions or comments you have for our panel. And I see lots of hands, including a gentleman over here on the right. And please tell us your name.
My name's Andrew, and I have a factual correction to make of Katrina, first of all. She put forward a claim that cross-dressing was more or less the preserve of Northerners. And I would like to draw to her attention the Rebecca riots in Wales, where a lot of cross-dressing by angry West Wales farmers took place before they burned down the toll booths. I've also got a question which is probably a little bit more intelligent. The only event I can think of as being sort of genuinely Luddite in recent history is the 1980s and the Siege of Wapping, etc. What lessons do you think we should have learned from that we didn't learn?
Now, actually, the Wapping newspaper strike and lockout, in which News International papers essentially were produced with new technology that ended the Fleet Street careers of printers in the old-fashioned hot metal sense, was a big technological change moment in recent British history.
I think it's a very good example, and of course, in that it also failed in the same way, as in what happened was that those who had the power asserted it very strongly and were in the end victorious. And what it showed was that there was no attempt to compromise, no ability to compromise on either side. And so what you saw was an act of aggression on the part of News International in moving to Wapping, because there hadn't been the discussion. So they took the power that they had, as Katrina was talking about, and they used it for their own benefit, and they didn't worry about what was going to happen.
But Bill, wasn't the immediate consequence of that liberal newspapers like The Guardian and new newspapers like The Independent took up that baton, used the words aggressive and so forth, but none of those papers today would go back to the old hot metal way of working, would they?
But it's not that the change of technology in itself is the problem. It is that the embedded practices around the old technology were simply thrown away and people's jobs and careers were thrown away. Whether or not they were defensible, they'd emerged over a period of time and brutal action was taken, just as with introducing new weaving technologies, new looms, undermining the livelihoods of the stocking makers. So the analogy, I think, is a very good one. It's not to say you would want to go back to having hand-woven stockings. It's that with a bit of humanity and a bit of concern for social justice, you can manage transitions to new technologies in ways that don't necessarily cause social disorder.
I saw other hands. Yep, go ahead.
Richard Millwood. As an artisan of the information age, should I be looking at the cloud as a new enclosure? And should I be occupying the internet with my tented community from my server in my living room? Or should I go and break and enter into Facebook and Google and smash them?
Bill?
You should assert control over your own online destiny, because if you don't, it will be taken away from you. So whilst this idea of cloud computing, this sense that instead of storing all your local your information on your own hard drive, on your own laptop or on your own phone, it's stored somewhere in server farms, you don't have to think about it, it's just out there, everything's easy. Whilst it is a very attractive, enabling technology, can make life easier, it does take control away from you. And time again, those who cede control find they have lost it forever. So having your own internet domain, having your own web server, having your own spinning disks in your house and your own high-speed network is a good idea. As a technologist, I would recommend it. We need to take back control of the internet from people like Facebook and ensure that they work for us.
Or indeed any other brand name organisation, I should add. We don't pick any particular one. Further thoughts and hands. Yes, lady there on the right.
My name is Ariana, and I just wanted to make a comment in relation to this idea of control. It was said earlier that politicians are making decisions on the basis of they are not particularly informed, in other words, about technology, and therefore I'd rather avoid making decisions at all and sort of purportedly, I think, leaving the market to do it for them. I would actually like to make a point that it is true that there is no such thing as traditionally seen political control on technology being exercised in terms of, democratic debate, and that is a very big problem in itself. However, the point I'm trying to make is that politics has had an impact on technology, because choices of policy-laden nature have been made, for instance, through the intellectual property law system. And that has been going on since the late 19th century, the framing of copyright laws, patent laws. And this has been done through technocrats, through patent offices, all the way through, for instance, now in competition agencies. I actually think that this is something that suits politicians quite well, because politicians don't make these decisions purportedly, leave them to technocrats, so they're completely immune in many ways from criticism. And then, obviously, when something goes wrong, they will be able to blame the technocrats.
A brief response, Bill?
I don't think we said the legal system was outside all of this, and I'd agree with your fundamental point, which is that that system is created by the political environment. That doesn't affect the more central argument around how we engage with these technologies and how we ensure that our lives are enhanced by them rather than destroyed by them. I don't think any of us said that it's outside, the legal system is outside it, though.
Other hands, I'll just get a few more in. Yep, here on the left-hand side.
My name is Jeff Jackson. I wanted to make a point, one or two, about the physical trades, which many of us are still very much involved in. So the skilled artisan is very much alive and kicking. And just like 200 years ago, what we do now, myself as joiner cabinet maker, is that we select very carefully that which suits us and that which works well for us. And in the building trade, people are eternally grateful for the hydraulic ram that allows us to dig holes faster and better and with a good deal less sweat and blood than previously was done. And in fact, there's a very diverse interplay between, let's loosely call it, capitalistic invention and the physical trades, because inventors will overreach themselves. Indeed, they certainly did in Victorian times, and certain things were taken up, and many things were not taken up because they didn't work well. And therefore, skilled workers have always picked and chosen that which suits them. And so I would suggest that continues. And we don't recognise when Luddism does work because we don't hear about it. But actually what happens is that capitalism has to take its tail between its legs and creep off into the corner and find it has to ditch an invention that really does not work.
Thank you, Jeff. That's a really interesting set of points. And I'm wondering if, Katrina, with your historian's perspective, you might tell us if Jeff's individual story fits into a rather wider narrative.
Very much so, actually, because the Luddites weren't, as we said, opposing all technologies. They were opposing technologies that made a worse product. So anything like the stocking weavers opposed these machines which they would have to sew the poorer cloth together rather than making complete stocking. It sounds quite esoteric, but it was very important in the Nottinghamshire industry. So they were opposing things that made the consumer poorer as well. So that fits in very much with a move to make a quality product in, as you said, joinery or building, which is tailored to the consumer rather than what the manufacturer can do as cheaply as possible.
Jeff, would you call yourself a Luddite in the strict sense of the word?
Oh, I'd be proud if somebody called me a Luddite. Can I give you an example of a local farmer who used to bring potato workers across from Ireland who were magnificent men who had extraordinary abilities to both dig potatoes, but then on a quiet day they might be asked to dig a bit of a ditch. And this, within living memory, is of men who are able to dig faster than a JCB in a tight corner. And that's truly impressive.
Can I just say from a very personal point of view, because I come from several generations of carpenters and stonemasons, that when my grandfather died and we inherited his old tool books, I opened the tool books and I looked at the collection of tools in there, and in terms of selecting things which had worked, I saw these tools which had evolved probably in total over thousands of years into almost like the Platonic ideal form of the lathe, etc. And I think if you look around at the moment, there is an explosion of interest in people wanting to engage in craft-type labour as well, apart from anything else, because it's a wonderful antidote to the listless alienation of modern work and the desire to reconnect and have your hands on the materials of the stuff of life.
Gentleman here at the front.
I'm Charlie and I'm doing A-level history, economics and English, so it's kind of quite good to listen to this. You mentioned a lot about kind of Lord Byron and the romantic aspect of being a Luddite. And if this kind of Luddism did in fact succeed, would Britain still have been able to expand and be as productive as it has been if we didn't kind of accept the mass production and the movement away from artisan craftsmanship?
I think the historian might pick this one up first. Katrina?
The pace of change certainly would have been slower. Big factories really stopped being built from the 1830s, 1840s onwards, and also the steam power expands considerably in this period. So if we were still in this period of small workshops and doing things by hand, then of course it would have been slower. But what we lost with that move to industrialisation was the sense in which communities had control over their work. And child labour is one of the big bugbears of the Victorian period. These groups of workers were opposing child labour not just because it brought wages down, but it also demeaned their quality of life.
Any other hands that we see? Yes, over that side. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name's Jim. I'm not as articulate as a lot of people, but I want to say something about technology because I'm absolutely anti-technology. I know that we've got to use certain amounts, but for example, somebody talked about whopping. I was on the picket line for a period of time supporting my comrades and brothers and sisters at Wapping, and I was subject directly to technology with police batons and things like that. We look at the technology of war as also in a previous life being an ex-soldier. I look at the way in which technology is used in war, particularly over the past few months in North Africa, and can't see the benefits. Now, I'm not stupid. I mean, I know there are benefits to technology, but I think we should be looking at minimum amounts of technology, appropriate levels of technology, and actually moving forward, not back, into self-sustaining communities, living off the land and doing things in a way which is about community and not about people not having time for one another and being obsessed with technology, I guess. A very brief comment, Bill.
I'd say that the information technologies I use have enhanced my life enormously, that my desire to live sustainably but in a world that can feed everyone relies on the effective deployment of very advanced technologies and new inventions that will make that possible. And so I don't see it as being a choice between forward or backward, but I agree entirely it has to work with the grain of being human, not against it.
Well, at the risk of creating our own enclosure here, I'm afraid our time has actually come to an end, but I'd like to thank all of you, the audience here at the Sage Gateshead today, for a very lively debate, and our panel today, Katrina Navikas, Andrew Sims and Bill Thompson. Thank you all very much.
Tonight's Free Thinking debate was chaired by Rana Mitter. The producer was Eliane Glazer. And you can download that programme by going to the Radio 3 website and finding your way to Free Thinking. Well, tomorrow, Professor Sarah Jane Blakemore examines new research about radical changes taking place in the adolescent brain and asks whether it's time to rethink our attitudes towards youth and the place of teenagers in society.